Cancer sucks. Hello, my name is Sandy Hodkin and I'm with Remax Aerospace here in Cocoa Beach. So you haven't seen me in a while, and it's because I was diagnosed on the 19th of November last year with leukemia. And I got, unfortunately, the acute kind of leukemia. So I've been out of action for quite some time. But here I'm going to tell you that I'm fighting fit, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey. I hadn't been feeling well for a few weeks, and I didn't know what it was going on. I had difficulty breathing, difficulty doing anything, didn't have much of an appetite. Went to my doctor and he thought it was a thyroid issue and gave me some tests and then sent me off to getting some blood work. And that nothing seemed to really tell them anything. A few days later, I was sitting on the couch and my girlfriend tried to call me and I couldn't get off the couch to answer the phone. I sat there for a while and she rang a few times and then decided that she better send her son over because I typically don't answer the phone. And so she wanted to see if everything was okay. And her son came over and he broke into the back end of my house to get me, saw me in such a condition that he decided that I needed to go to the hospital. They drove me to Cape Canaveral and my girlfriend, she wound down the window as we got close to the ER and yelled out, "My friend needs a wheelchair. Hurry, quick, I don't know what's wrong with her. She can't breathe." Very nice gentleman came down with a wheelchair and took me into the ER. They processed me very quickly and got me into a room. I don't really remember much else until later that evening. An ambulance came to Cape Canaveral and put me in it and took me off to somewhere that I'm not quite sure where. The next morning when I woke up and I asked the nurse where I was, she says, "You don't know?" And I said, "No." She said, "You're at Advent Health in Orlando and it's a cancer hospital." I said, "I've got cancer." And she said, "Didn't you know?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, your doctor will be here shortly and they can discuss it with you." She wasn't able to discuss it with me, obviously, because she's not the doctor. A little bit later on, in came my doctors and they discussed the fact that I did have leukemia and it was the acute variety, meaning that it was all through my blood and my marrow bone. I was very surprised and I asked my doctor that the only person I knew that had leukemia was a little girl in my school at 9 years old, and she passed away. And I said, "So am I going to die?" They said that they'd hoped that I wouldn't, but they were going to do everything in their power to make sure that I was okay. And they had concluded that I needed to do the 7-day, 21-day cycle. So they gave me drugs in my drip the first 7 days, and then I did oral for the next 21 days. I was very ill and I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't have much energy. I couldn't really focus on anything. I couldn't read. I couldn't watch TV because I didn't have the concentration. And I basically sat in my room or lay on my bed for days and days and days. One of my doctors, Dr. Beauvoir, he was from Colombia and he would come in about 7 o'clock every morning, and he was a huge soccer fan, English football, and he presumed that everybody in England is also a huge football fan. And so every morning, the World Cup was now being played, and so every morning he would come in and he'd say, "Sandy, you've got to watch this match or that match." And he got very excited about it, and he was all about Argentina and Paris and France, and Portugal. And he said, "Now you have to watch 2 o'clock this afternoon." And so every afternoon I turned on the TV and tried to watch the football. The only problem is that I didn't have enough interest or knowledge to make the TV work better, and so it was all in Spanish. So I watched the World Cup in Spanish, and then every morning Dr. Beauvoir would come in and he would say, "Did you see the match, and did you see this goal and that goal?" And we just used to talk about it. That was wonderful because we didn't talk about me being sick. We talked about things that were happening around us, and it gave me something to look forward to every day. Friends would come by and would sit and chat with me, and that was a good way to pass the time. I also had a friend that would come over and we would play cribbage, and that was very good. The treatment was very interesting in the sense that I didn't really know what was going on very often. I did have drip and a pick inside of me, and they would put all the fluids through that. I didn't have much appetite. I couldn't really walk. I couldn't really eat much. I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself or have a shower. I had to have constant help, which was very difficult for me because I'm not used to that. They had the food at the hospital, huge meals and overwhelming. And people don't realize that when you have cancer, that you need little tiny plates, and you eat 2 bites or 3 bites, and really you're full. And so the food would just overwhelm you, and you weren't able to eat anything because it just was so overwhelming. And I remember when my children were little, they would say little bites, and you could always put more on the plate, and then the child wouldn't be overwhelmed and then would actually eat more. And that was the kind of concept that I did. So I would ask for just little food, and I would put it on at one plate, and I would take 2 bites and then move the food around my plate to make it look like I'd eaten, because the nurses were very strict about the fact that I didn't eat very much. That first month that I was in the hospital, I lost about 35 pounds, which was a lot. It was great at the beginning because I was like, oh gosh, this is a good way to lose weight, but obviously that's not really what it was for. The nurses were absolutely incredible. My doctors were absolutely incredible. Then it became close to Christmas, and I was like, I want to go home. If this is going to be my last Christmas, I want to go home and spend it with my family. What can I do to get out of here? And they said, well, okay, well then first of all, we've got to get you off the oxygen. So they made me do all these little breathing exercises. Then they said, well, we need you to get off the diaper and go to the bathroom by yourself. So I slowly took 2 steps, and they put a porta potty kind of thing at the end of my bed, and I would go to that. And then eventually I got to walk to the bathroom. Then they said, okay, now your next thing is that you've got to walk around the ward. So I was on the 11th floor, so it took me about 20 to 30 minutes to do 1 lap of the 11th floor. And they said, now you need to do 2 laps, and then you have to do 3 laps. And this went on and on until it got very close to the end of the first month, and they said, we may let you go home for a few days. To go home, though, we had to have my house ready. So I have a small little dog, a Westie, and they said that my dog would have to go visit with some friends, because I couldn't be scratched or licked by a dog because that would cause an infection. And because I didn't have any reserve in my body, then I could get an infection, and that would be very severe. So poor old Duncan, he had to go to a friend's house, and he stayed there for a while. Anybody who came to the house, they had to go through a sanitation cleaning system that my husband put together. He had tables outside of the house, and people had to take their shoes off and had to wear gloves and masks. Who knew that soil was a huge problem for me? But it was. And I wasn't allowed to use a knife just in case I cut myself, because I didn't have any platelets to make my blood clot. It was a hard experience because I'm a chef and I like to cook at home. And so to have my sisters come and make Christmas Day dinner without me really helping was tough. They did let me make the stuffing or the dressing, because all I had to do was cut a few onions and celery, and so I was allowed to do that, but sitting down. After Christmas, I had to go back into the hospital, and they were going to put me on an intensive chemo treatment, so 18 hours a week, and they did that through the drip. And so it was 3 hours of the drip, then you were off for 12 hours, and then 3 hours of drip again, and then you were having it. So it was 3 hours, 6 hours off, 3 hours, then 12 hours off. And so it went on, and that was done for a whole week. I had to get lots of bags of blood, lots of bags of platelets to make up the difference. Every morning they would draw my blood about 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and then they would decide what I needed that day. So whether I needed 5 bags of blood or 2 bags, or if I needed 2 bags of platelets. And so this continued all the week. Then I was to go home for a week, but I had to have 3 days coming back and being tested and having more blood and more platelets. The third week was usually a better week for me, and I was able to do a little bit more. The fourth week I was feeling pretty good, but then we had to go back and do it all over again. I kept my hair for as long as possible, it seems. I had really hair until about the 4th month, and then it started falling out in big chunks. I found hair everywhere. It was in the bathroom, in the shower, in the bed. It was on the floor. It was worse than having the dog because he, doesn't really shed. So I was shedding for the both of us. Then, it was a question of, what do you do? Do you take all your hair off? Do you shave it off? Do you wear hats? Do you wear scarves? Do you try wigs? So I have a few pictures here of me in my different stages of what do I do. It was all a bit funny, and I ended up deciding that it wasn't worth it. We live in Florida, it's too hot, the hats were too warm, the wigs were too warm, so I ended up just doing nothing. And now, as you can see, it started to grow back a bit, a little thicker, but it's coming back and it's doing well. After a period of time, you end up stopping with the chemo drugs, and they give you the oral drugs at home, and that goes on for a while. They are fairly large, like horse pills, and they smell terrible. I mean, the smell was the worst for me. You do it and you get through. You have to do what the doctors tell you. Either you believe in your doctors and you just do it, and I just did it. I walked, I tried to eat more than I could. I did some little bit of exercise, not that I could do very much, but I did everything that they said. And I was very, very fortunate that I didn't get an infection, and I didn't have to go back and stay in the hospital when I wasn't due to go to the hospital. So I tried and I tried, and they consider me some kind of a miracle that I have done so well after being so ill. And I'm just going to show you the little video of me ringing the bell.
You gotta read that flag out loud. It's better over there. Yeah, if you want to go over here, you can probably better. Ring this bell 3 times well. It's told to clearly say my treatment's done, this course is run, and I'm on my way.
When I finished my treatment on the 29th of March, I then had to, obviously still at home, take my meds and go visit and do that type of thing. But now we're not even a year later, and I'm stronger and getting there, and I'm now back at work. And I just wanted to share my journey because it was so unreal to me. This is how people are. And I mean, I have helped with cancer research and raised money for it, but until it gets to you and it hits you, it is really unreal. My family haven't ever suffered from cancer, and so it was a rude awakening to all my siblings. And I cannot say enough about the people who looked after me and the friends and family who helped me. So this is my story. Hopefully I will try to help you with your real estate needs coming up in the near future, and hopefully I'll see you around Cocoa Beach.